NFL Week 1 recaps. Typically, in the past NFL seasons, I would just do game previews week to week and talk about how I think games will play out and bets I'm making. But going to try something new this year with doing weekly recaps. We'll see how it goes, and if it gets any traction, I'll keep doing them. On Sunday night and Monday morning, I watch each game on fast forward, and I'll take notes. I never watch the live broadcast. The notes I take, I turned into quick summaries about each game, and that's what I'll discuss in these recap videos. Week 1 was pretty uneventful for me. I went 2-2 on official best bets, 2 wins on totals, 2 losses on spreads, but feel like I have a good feel for what to expect from most teams going forward. If you're looking to join a community that focuses on sports betting education and improving your sports betting IQ, consider joining the Betting Network Discord. I have all types of betting lessons on various topics, and each week I post what I call the NFL Power Packet. It has my NFL power ratings for each team and what I make for a spread on each game, and I post a lot of the advanced metrics I use to make my numbers. Members of the Discord can download it, make their own copy, and edit or adjust how they see fit, and make their own numbers for each game. If you aren't pricing out each team and making your own numbers, you're doing it wrong. It's as simple as that. But besides that, maybe the biggest benefit of the Discord is just interacting with other members that share a common goal to become smarter bettors, more informed bettors. A lot of members in there have been with me for going on 5 years now. We all share information, discuss games and different angles on how to beat the books. You can join for free, but you'll have limited access. But $50 will get you 90 days of full access to all the channels, features, and tools in the Discord, and of course all the bets I'm personally making, along with bets I post that I copy from my network of professional betting groups. I call them source plays. The invite link to join the Discord is in the description of this video. With that out of the way, let's get into the NFL Week 1 recap. First thing I always like to look at when the week concludes is which teams outperformed the market expectations or which teams with market support failed to cover. On the screen now are the teams that got market support, or in other words, respected bets, but they failed to cover. Atlanta, they opened -2.5, closed -4. They, of course, lost outright. Carolina opened +5, closed +3.5. They got blew out. Seattle opened 5 and closed -6.5. They won by 6 points exactly, so this game came down to what number you got and when you bet it. Cleveland, they opened as 1-point underdogs, closed -2-point favorites, and Dallas blew them out. And then finally, on Monday Night Football, the Jets opened +5. They closed +3.5, but it wasn't so much the Jets getting sharp action as the line moved close to kickoff. It was more related to the McCaffrey news, but Jets got rocked anyway. Now let's go to the individual games real quick. First game up, Vikings, Giants. Giants head coach Brian Daboll took over as play caller and, had some people thinking this would make a big difference, and I think it did, but it just doesn't matter with a QB like Daniel Jones. Giants, 3.5 yards per play, 240 total yards. They went 0 for 3 in the red zone. Daniel Jones finished with a negative 0.41 EPA per dropback. His expected completion percentage is a stat you're going to hear me reference a lot. It's exactly how it sounds. It's the percentage of passes a QB should complete. Daniel Jones had an expected completion percentage of 68%. His true completion percentage was 52%. So what does this mean? Receivers were wide open. Easy throws were created and drawn up by Daboll. Daniel Jones just missed the throws or never found the open receivers. This is a game where the box score matches the final score. Minnesota just went heavy on the run when they got the lead. Sam Darnold only threw 2 times late third quarter and on, and both those times were on third downs. Just a nightmare situation for Daboll as he took all this responsibility on in a kind of risk-reward situation on the hot seat. So if it works out, he gets the credit, but failure will be all on him and likely will cost his job. Giants had 2 drives that ended inside the Minnesota 7-yard line that resulted in 0 points. Vikings number 2 wideout Jordan Addison got hurt. Not sure what his status is. But next game up, we got the Patriots Bengals. Patriots as the biggest underdog in week 1 win outright. Ran the football and were physical up front is the blueprint to beating the Bengals. The loss of defensive tackle DJ Reader on this Bengals defensive line is just massive. He was their main run stuffer, and his absence showed up big time. Offensively, Cincy will be fine when they get T. Higgins back and Jay Chase, but this defense does need help. This is a game that New England just got a lot of breaks on. They finished +2 in turnover margin. Nothing about the win says the Patriots are going to be a great team or anything. It was more about what the Bengals did wrong than what the Patriots did right. They just stuck to the game plan with a physical run game, simple as that. And the Bengals are just always slow out of the gate each season. There's a lot of people with some big money on Patriots under regular season wins this year that aren't thrilled to see the Patriots start 1-0 after everyone really expected them to be 0-1 going into week 2. Next game up, Panthers-Saints, lopsided game of the week. Saints by 32 points, and believe it or not, the Panthers got sharp money in the game. Just goes to show you, even sharps get it wrong sometimes. In fact, they only get it right a little bit more than half the time, but winning 55% of the time is enough to be extremely profitable as long as you do a lot of the other things perfect. This Panthers offense just looked awful. It was so bad that every time they snapped the ball, they were losing a half point from an EPA perspective. If you're still unfamiliar with what EPA is, it stands for expected points added. You can Google it and get the exact definition. It's probably the most widely used metric to define a team or positional success or define good and bad. But really, it doesn't take an advanced stat like EPA to tell you the Panthers played bad. And Derek Carr for the Saints, just such an interesting quarterback in my opinion. All quarterbacks are better in a clean pocket when they have time to throw, but Derek Carr is just so good when he has zero pressure compared to when he's under pressure. He goes to being one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. It's just such a big difference. Carolina's pass rush was non-existent. They had 1 QB pressure combined in the first half. The Saints were probably made to look better than they really are based on this matchup, but the questions we always want to ask ourselves after games like this is, did the Panthers just play bad, or are they really bad? Are the Saints really good, or are the Panthers just really bad? Because the NFL is all about overreactions week to week, so if you can identify this and kind of block out the noise, you can find value. Like Chargers play Carolina in week 2. Before the games this past Sunday, some sportsbooks offer what's called a look-ahead line, and the Chargers were -3-point road favorites versus Carolina. After the games this past Sunday, the lines reopened. Chargers are now 6 or 6.5-point favorites. That's all based on one game, how the Chargers performed and how the Panthers performed. 3.5-point adjustment with no key player injuries is pretty significant there. Saints, Marshawn Lattimore left the game with an injury, but post-game he said, "I'm good." Moving on, let's look at Jags-Dolphins. Main takeaway here is Miami's offense played about as sloppy as could be, but still put up 400 yards. Jags holding Miami to 20 points is great, but how good are you defensively when you allow a team to march down the field for 80-yard drives multiple times? It wasn't really the Jags' defense that had anything to do with Miami not scoring a lot. Miami just couldn't execute or finish drives. This initially had me thinking there might be value on both betting Miami and the over next week because of this game being low scoring and Miami looking so sloppy. But looks like the market really disagrees with that, at least as of now. This total opened 51 in the Thursday night game versus the Bills coming up this week. It's been bet down to around 49. Miami looked like it was trending up to -3, but Buffalo money came in and forced this number down to -1.5. My instincts tell me this is a setup, and we will see Miami and over money when the limits increase at the sports books later this week. There's a lot of market manipulation that goes on, especially early in the week. This one kind of smells fishy. I might pull the trigger today, and if I do, I'll post in the Discord. For the Jags and their offense, all preseason, talks about their downfield vertical passing game, and it did come to reality. Trevor Lawrence had an ADOT of 9.7 yards. ADOT stands for average depth of target. He had 9.3 in intended air yards, which is the fourth highest of any QB in week one. There's a B. Key player injuries. Jags top cornerback Tyson Campbell left the game. Soon as he left the game, Jags allowed some big plays. His status going forward will be something to look for. Next game, Texans-Colts. I love this Colts offense. It's the definition of boom or bust. Huge big play potential. It's a true RPO-style offense. Indy outgained Houston by 1.5 yards per play. AR-15's numbers on the box score won't really jump out at you. 268 total yards of offense, 3 total touchdowns. It's a solid game, but when you look at how he went about getting these yards, 16.5 intended air yards. He's just bombing it downfield or taking off and running. Really big fan of AR-15 in this Colts offense. The Colts defense, totally different story. I hate this Gus Bradley defense. They play the same defense every game, every play. No disguise, no blitz. It's just the same base defense, and they just have to rely so heavily on the defensive front four to get pressure because their secondary is just so bad. As much as I like the Colts offense, they're going to have to play flawless to win games because this defense isn't stopping anyone. Very weird box score in this game, too. Houston had 26 first downs to just the Colts 14. Houston dominated the time of possession, 40 minutes to 20 minutes. Houston ran 33 more plays on offense than Indy, but in the end, it was just a 2-point win. And speaking of box scores, next game, Titans-Bears, is the misleading box score game of the week. Bears came into this game with a ton of optimism and expectations. They won and covered, which is all that matters, but they did it without scoring an offensive touchdown and with only 148 yards of total offense with 2.8 yards per play. Caleb Williams was terrible, even for a rookie QB making his first start. He finished with 16% below his expected completion percentage rate, threw for just 93 yards, and this was against a Titans defense that's not really good. Titans, 3 turnovers. Bears, defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown was the difference. Next game, Cardinals, Bills. I said this in the Discord on Sunday night, but Josh Allen, very early MVP favorite. He took over this game. It was all him. 4 touchdowns. Bills trailing at halftime, didn't panic. They stuck to their game plan, and it paid off. If Buffalo went away from the run game versus this Cardinals run defense, it would have been the worst move they could have done. Bills' offensive line just bullied them up front. A lot of teams are going to do this versus Cardinals' bad defense. It's clear this Buffalo team is putting an emphasis on the run game, which is a reason I'm hesitant to bet overs on Thursday night versus Miami with how much Buffalo wants to run it. 33 rush attempts last week. On the other side of the ball, Buffalo's defense allowed a lot of underneath short stuff. I think they just didn't want to get beat deep by Arizona, which makes sense, but it made their defense look weaker than it might actually be. Marvin Harrison, non-factor. Same with Dalton Kincaid. 2 big surprises there. More so surprised at Kincaid not being involved at all with all the hype around him this offseason and preseason. Buffalo's best defensive back, Teron Johnson, has already been ruled out versus Miami. This Bills defense cannot take any more injuries. Moving on, next game up, Steelers, Falcons. Really bad and ugly loss at home for Atlanta. Falcons' new staff all across the board loses a game they needed to win with the Eagles and Chiefs on deck. Market agreed with Atlanta, too. They opened 2.5 at some books and closed -4, and they lose outright. That Mike Tomlin magic is at it again. I mean, not good for my under 8.5 regular season win total bet on the Steelers. Steelers just dominated the trenches. That's where the games are won and lost. I always say it. Especially defensively. This Falcons offensive line that this new coaching staff praised all preseason and barely played them in the preseason because they were so confident it was such a strong unit. They got bullied for 4 quarters. Atlanta -3 in turnovers. Steelers didn't even score an offensive touchdown, but they forced 3 turnovers on their side of the field. That's enough alone right there to win and cover. Next game, we got Raiders-Chargers. Chargers lacked the talent versus the Raiders, but made up for it by being the better coached team with a better game plan. Raiders, -3 in turnovers. Chargers averaged 7.44 yards per carry with 176 total rushing yards. Herbert only threw for 144 yards. He didn't even have to do anything. Harbaugh knows he doesn't have the skill position players, so he just lined up in heavy formation and ran it. Played a clean game with no mistakes. Antonio Pierce is just not a good coach. This has become obvious. He might be a player's coach, good motivator, but this one decision alone, says it all. He elected to punt down 6 points in the fourth quarter on 4th and 1 on the Chargers' 42-yard line. Chargers then go down and score to end the game. It might be the single worst coaching decision of Week 1, and that's saying a lot. Such a conservative, dumb coaching performance by him. It's exactly what you can't do when you're a team like the Raiders. And I was on the Raiders, so I'm really heated with how he coached that game. There was a difference. But how about J.K. Dobbins? 10 carries for 135 yards. Looks like his old self, which is crazy considering the injuries he's had. Next, Broncos-Seahawks. Broncos scored 10 points without a first down on offense. Most rookie QBs struggle Week 1, but Bo Nix had the worst Week 1 QB performance of any QB based on EPA and a lot of other advanced stats. Denver was forced to play outside their comfort zone. They're a team that wants to just run the ball and use their O-line to dominate, but to ask Bo Nix to win you that game on the road versus a Mike Macdonald defense wasn't going to happen. Seattle's offense, led by Kenneth Walker III, just wore down the Broncos' defense. Seattle, who is already dealing with a bunch of offensive line issues, waiting for guys to return, guys playing out of position. They lost George Fant in the first quarter, and this was the main reason for the slow start. Seahawks' first 6 of 8 drives resulted in 3 yards. Seattle won because of their defense, but it looked better because of their opponent versus a rookie quarterback. Next game up, Commanders-Bucks. I bet the over in this game solely based on how bad I think the Commanders' defense is, especially defending the pass. Listen to some of these numbers for Baker Mayfield in this Bucks offense. 55% passing success rate. That's 95th percentile. Plus 0.32 EPA per dropback. That's 96th percentile. Those are just a couple advanced metrics, but he completed 81% of passes. He had the highest expected completion percentage of any QB Week 1. This is what Baker Mayfield was able to do. What's other quarterbacks going to do versus Commanders secondary? Commanders are just going to get torched by any team with 3 legit wide receivers. They just can't cover them all. And the Bucs are lucky the passing game was so good because they had nothing going on the ground. Outside of one big play, one big run by Bucky Irvine, there wasn't much run game versus Washington run defense that's below average. Jaden Daniels is shaping up to be the new check down king. Before garbage time TD that late drive they had, Jaden Daniels only completed 5 passes to wide receivers all game. He wanted to run it a lot, which is a rookie QB tendency, just take off and run, but he wants nothing to do with throwing outside or downfield to wide receivers. His caught air yards in this game was 0.0. I'm not sure how that's even possible. His average air yards to sticks was negative 2.4. I've only seen one other time a QB had a negative average air yards to sticks, which is just average air yards to the first down marker. And it was Sam Darnold, a game he played last year. It was negative 0.10 or negative 0.10. Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury obviously has put an emphasis on quick dropbacks, getting the ball out in the passing game, but it's resulting in just dropping back and firing to the check down. During preseason, Daniels had a release time of 1.7 seconds. In Week 1, it was up to 2.4 seconds, which was still the fastest release time of any quarterback. What makes this so crazy is throughout the game, this Tampa Bay defense had 3 different defensive backs leave the game due to injury, and this Washington offense still couldn't get the ball to wide receivers downfield against backups. This was a Bucs secondary that was already weak due to offensive changes and a lot of new faces in the secondary. Next up, Cowboys, Browns. Browns were another team that got respected money bet on them. Opening +1, closing -2. Deshaun Watson, 24 for 45 passing for 169 yards. The Browns' offense finished with 230 yards of offense, but 65 of those yards were on the final garbage time drive. So you can remove 65 yards from that 230 yards because Cowboys just conceded those yards. They were already up by 3 scores. Browns' offensive line is all playing out of position, and Watson isn't mobile anymore. There were talks of a real RPO type offense with Cleveland, but I don't even see how that's possible. And by the way, RPO is run pass option, which you need a true dual threat quarterback. Watson isn't that. Dallas put up 33 points, which makes you think the Browns' defense got torched, but Dallas only had 265 total yards on 4.4 yards per play. Dak is just the best quarterback versus cover one, and that's what the Browns run. You'd think they'd switch it up knowing this, but some defensive coordinators like Jim Schwartz are just stubborn and stuck in their ways. Last game, Sunday Night Football last night. Monday Night Football, I should say. Jets, Niners. Going into this game, based on just roster construction and matchups for both teams, the Jets had some positive matchups, but San Fran just absolutely dominated. They did so despite several factors not in their favor, big one being the late scratch of CMC, McCaffrey. They were without safety Hufanga. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk was a non-factor. Offensive tackle Trent Williams was on and off the field getting IVs. The 49ers run game with Mason went right at the strengths of the Jets defense. We haven't seen any teams do that and have success in the past couple seasons. And it wasn't just a run game either. Purdy picked apart the secondary and had all time to do it. Purdy was only pressured 2 times in non-garbage time minutes. Shanahan just coached circles around Salah, who he has a lot of familiarity with. This game reminded me a lot of games when Bill Belichick faced one of his former disciples or former staff members. He just had such a big advantage. Even if his team, isn't the most talented, the coaching advantage is just so lopsided. And it's crazy to think the Niners will probably improve as the season goes on. Anyone with future bets on the Niners should be excited. But then again, it's still week 1, and regular season games don't mean anything. We've seen this before from teams. We've seen it before from the Niners. If you watch to the end, I appreciate it. Hopefully you found this video helpful or informative. If you could give this video a thumbs up, that'd be great. Be on the lookout for my NFL Week 2 game previews I'll be doing later this week. That's it for this one. Until next time, good luck with your bet.